Hey guys, we are back again. Well, I mean, I haven't been here yet. My name's Jess, if you don't know who I am. You do know Alexa, my lovely guest who was here earlier. And we've got John here. You don't know John yet, but you will because he's going to scare the pants off you. Because John is here to talk about Here They Lie. It is not only a horror game, it is a VR horror game.
Yes, it is.
And we got our first tease of it right after the Sony conference. And I do mean a tease. It was like a collection of creepy images setting the tone for what I'm sure is going to be one of the scariest games I'm going to have played in recent years. Decades.
Yeah.
I'm so scared. Please tell me what I'm in for. I need to know.
Horror and VR?
Yeah.
Horror VR, a surreal
Yes.
trip down the rabbit hole as
Oh,
you're
gosh.
following the woman in yellow.
Fantastic.
There's a lot to the story and to the narrative of this adventure into this sort of dystopian world. We're really excited to bring into VR just the strangeness and the sort of impossibility of places. And in VR, we're able to do that uniquely. It's a lot of fun.
Do you ever get, when you're playing it, do you ever get disoriented or like how, like,
You know,
will I get disoriented?
no.
Okay. I mean,
no.
like in a good way?
Oh, well, you'll get, what we'll want to do is we'll want to take, you know, a normal place that you feel like you would walk through and you get a sense of it and you'd feel like this is a place I know. And then we build upon it the impossible. So imagine you're walking down an alley and all of a sudden the alley starts turning into a cyclopean city.
Right.
By starting in the normal place, you just kind of disconnect yourself from reality. That becomes way more powerful when you're physically walking through the space like you feel like you're doing in VR.
So let's take it from step one. I mean, what can you tell us about who are we in the game? What kind of narrative structure are we putting together?
Well, most I can't tell you
Because it's all secret.
It's all secret, and it's all for the player to discover. The player is going to wake up in this strange place, and
Okay.
as they're following Dana, the woman in yellow.
Right.
They're going to be confronted by different groups and factions in this world, and be challenged with decisions and moral choices. Those things are important because they're going to help define who you are as you're playing through the world and to the end decisions you have to make.
So does the game then change based on what you decide to do?
There's some branching in it, yeah.
Right.
Ooh.
That's awesome. So you guys your team's actually made up of people who used to work on like Call of Duty and
Sure.
Tomb Raider and stuff. What's it like working in a much smaller studio?
Well,
game?
yeah, our studio's made up of Corey Davis, who is the creative director of Spec Ops: The Line.
Yeah.
And Corey and
Great
Spec
game.
Ops did a lot of the moral decisions and making the player be confronted by the choices in war, and it's so great in the narrative. And then we got Toby Gard, the creator of Tomb Raider, Richard Smith and myself, who are Call of Duty and Medal of Honor guys.
Yep.
We had all been making a lot of big games, and it's a lot of fun. I certainly love that. Big teams, you're able to pull so much to bear on a game. But we wanted a project where everybody knew each other. It was taking it from that big scale into a small band, and so we finished our last job, and we literally that Sunday showed up in my garage and got
Wow.
started on Tangentleman.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was great. You know, like we had like about 6 people all piled into the garage in Glendale. And it's a lot of
That's
fun.
awesome.
And
So how big is your team now?
now we're 12 to 15.
Oh wow, okay.
Oh.
That's fantastic. And how long have you been working on this
We've
game?
been working on this game for about a year and a half.
Wow. Okay.
What is our time, when will we see it?
We're shooting for launch of the launch window of VR, so late fall VR. Is what we're
Great.
trying to hit.
So, I mean, obviously, you guys have such a history with so many different genres and different kinds of games. What drove you towards wanting to make a horror game, particularly psychological horror? Sounds pretty dense.
Well, it's definitely in Corey's wheelhouse.
Totally.
He's very
Yeah.
comfortable with the. He's very comfortable with the genre.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of subjects to explore. And what we wanted to push was the surreal, the strange, and sort of the eerie. And instead of making it about monster closets and jump scares, we weren't looking so much about the Scream or the Friday the 13th, but we were looking more for like a Shining or
Right.
Under the Skin or Beyond the Black Rainbow, something more psychological.
Yeah.
That to us was going to be where we were the most excited, because there's so much room to play in there. to find the right tone.
So would you say it's been more about building atmosphere than designing monsters?
Yes.
We're so excited.
It's completely about building atmosphere because we want the horror to sort of well up inside of you. We want that discomfort and sense of dread to be because of all the elements, the how the world is put together, the how the elements are interacting with you. Once you put on those headphones and you're in the 3D audio, you're able to cue the player to sounds that are coming from you.
Good Lord.
Right? You know where that sound's coming from. You know exactly in your head where that sound's coming from, and it really freaks people out.
Yeah, I mean, now that you brought it up, we have to talk about VR because obviously horror and VR are equally as made for each other as they are things that should never, ever, ever go together. Was it an immediate decision that you wanted this horror game to be a VR experience, or did that come later?
It was pretty early in the process. We were always making the strange horror, and this was in about early 2014, and that's when the kit started to roll out, and it just kind of became natural as we were working through it to realize that this was going to have a really great home on VR. So we adapted very quickly, and we've actually been using it's been since last January where we've been running on VR and trying different versions of it, trying things that work and realizing things that don't work, and just adapting as we get to the right spot.
I'm just playing the
Watching
trailer
this thing.
again.
Can you talk a little bit about the design aesthetic? Like, sometimes it seems a little surreal, but then this looks very realistic. Like, and then your color palette goes from dark to really bright, as we're watching right now. So can you just talk about like the artistic design?
Sure. Well, there's certainly a lot of noir elements in there. We wanted to limit the palette, give you things that you could focus on. Composition is key, and by taking out the colors, we're able to focus you in on the composition of the places, the textures, the materials. They come out a lot more. And then when you're also seeing is we mix in that normal, because if you don't give if you give people just too much strange, it just automatically goes into fantasy land. By having a place that you feel like you've walked through, you feel like you've been in, and then opening that up, we can sort of turn the water up slowly on the player, and when it builds up from inside, they get more creeped out as they go, because you just start to see how it can't be real anymore, but it happens slowly enough that you just get freaked out by it.
Would you liken it at all to like that Silent Hill dichotomy, where it's like you're in familiar places and familiar buildings, and then everything takes a turn?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yes, that is terrifying. That just sounds awful. So were there any difficulties related to developing for VR that you hadn't experienced in other platforms, and could you expand on that?
Sure. It's all a lot of it's the motion model. How are we going to move through this world?
Right.
For the last year and a half, I don't think many people knew how yet it was going to be.
Absolutely.
What were the best ways to be inside the world? What's the best way to interact in the world? And so you'd see a lot of articles on people suggesting things they thought were going to work, but nobody knew yet. And so there was a lot of experimentation. We used to joke we need our VR merit badges, because it's you'd be trying. You definitely felt like you were on the frontier of something. You're trying something that people didn't know what to do and how to do it yet. It's a lot of fun because you are on a frontier. You're trying something new. So we've learned a lot. We've done lots of tests on how the player moves, what they're comfortable with, what builds up some of the issues that people have had in the early stages of VR. And so we have a lot of solves for that. Some of our movement, the way we have our comfort turns, these are things that are there to help a player experience the game, stay immersed in the game, but at the same time, very comfortable. And been happy with E3 because we've been able to watch a lot of people play, and I think the results have borne out that we're on the right track. We still have time. We're going to be spending, all the time till the last second, continuing to refine that motion model and make sure that players, can stay in it for a long time and stay immersed, because that's just really a great place.
What kind of feedback have you seen from people playing at E3? Does anyone scream? Has there been any
the worst thing
jumpy people?
There are jumpy things. The worst thing I saw was somebody who literally fell out of his chair. And I was worried for him for a second. He rocked back just to that point, and then the chair started to tip. But so there are some things that we see. What we also see is the people's comfort in moving. We're used to it, and so we move around a lot. And so it was interesting to watch how people who haven't played it very much, they are still wanting to use the controller. They still want to play more traditionally, and they're not quite ready yet to really use their whole head and shoulders to move around. And that's an important part of it. It's like to recognize you have that full range of motion and that it's a big part of it.
So what technically is the navigation scheme you've gone for getting players through the world? What are we using?
The default one is what we call comfort mode, where the head looks, the body goes. So it's sort of like you're going to walk. If you're walking forward with the stick, you're looking this way. You're going to start to move this way.
Right.
A lot of times in horror, you want to turn around quickly, though. And in that case, we have on the right stick, you're doing these turns, these discrete turns where you're rotating around, but we add in a fade to black between each turn. That limits some of the challenges that players have experienced. And most people, between those two things and looking around, they navigate the world excellently.
Nice.
I would gather that it must be sort of slow pace, like you would kind of be working your way through gradually. So, I mean, or is it like got a lot of quick sections? Because that's one of the things with VR that a lot of people are having difficulty with, is like you have a game like Riggs or something, and it's such fast movement, people are finding it difficult to not get sick.
Yeah.
VR, you mentioned it at the beginning, and it is true. VR and horror are a great pairing, and they're pairing for multiple reasons. And one of them is the fact that you're in the world and you're scared and you're in the place, and that strengthens the horror. But also, there's a lack of agency in good horror. The player doesn't have a lot of, or in movies, the character, they don't have a lot of options. They don't get to fight back too much. They don't have a lot of options and controls. By limiting the pace, by doing things that are about making the player feel fragile or not on par with the challenges they experience, you increase their fear and their discomfort, but you're also aiding in the player's ability to navigate through the world. It actually feeds each other to the better experience. So it actually plays off really well.
Yeah.
We do limit some of your pacing, and it's for the fear, but it also really helps on how the player feels.
Yeah. Is there a lot of exploration, or are you kind of funneling players more into the story that you want them to see as you want them to see it?
Well, there's certainly some offshoots and there's some paths the player is going to take, but it is an experiential, narrative-driven game, so there is more about the experiencing the core story. We want to create a dense experience for the player, so while there are going to be some offshoots and paths they're going to take, they're going to keep on being funneled toward the main path.
I'd also love to talk about, I mean, I know you want to keep everything quiet a little bit, but I did want to ask if you're sharing about the gameplay. Are we talking the kind of gameplay, am I going to be armed, or am I just going to be scared and hiding? Is there combat? Or is it more just like an adventure?
No, there are characters in the world, and they will kill you.
They're going to hurt me?
Yeah.
They're going to hurt me?
But I don't want to get too much into them because they're part of what the players can experience. There's a little of it in the demo, so that's fine. But it is definitely about your taking on the world and understanding what the elements are. There's a lot in the story and in the extra details for you to figure out why you're here, what it's about, what is Dana about. And that's the key elements. The other things, those characters will be challenging you. They'll be confronting you with difficult choices and decisions that the player is going to have to make that will make you uncomfortable. And that's a big part of the control as well that the player has.
Well, this sounds absolutely fascinating. I can't wait. So it's down on the show floor?
It's on the show floor. You can play it in the PSVR section.
Yeah.
It's right there.
That's amazing.
We gotta go.
And we gotta go. Alexa and I are both terrified of horror games, but it's like
love them.
it's like a delicious masochism. It's just I gotta do it anyway. So thank you so much for making it, so we can be terrified. Thank you for joining us. We are going to go to a break, and then we're going to be back to talk about Skylanders. But thank you so much for joining us, and we will be back with you in a moment.